Oh, Emily, by the way, did say that Carvel cakes were like a staple.
It's a New York
it's like a
real
Bronx
Knickerbocker.
staple. Yeah, like a Fudgy the Whale cake.
Yeah,
she was like, "You've never had them before."
I remember the first Beastie Boys single, like part of their origin story was that when they were a punk band, was a Fudgy the Whale novelty song.
Oh yeah. I bet Rick Rubin made them do that on some
I think Rick Rubin was like the producer on it. Yeah,
on some like weird alt-right shit even back then.
Yeah, maybe. Might go back for more Fudgy after recording.
It's in the freezer.
I don't know. I can't remember the last time I had like a classic like ice cream cake.
Yeah. That like kind of hit the spot. To be honest,
see, you only like ice cream cake is a very decadent thing.
Yeah,
like, you only want to have it for like special occasions.
And you'll never buy it for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like it's just like, oh, I just need something. I have a sweet tooth. I'll get a whole fucking ice cream cake.
It's Alex.
It's episode 269 of View from 202, a special birthday episode for none other than our own Ben Cork. And we got all the bells and whistles for the big occasion. We got a big ice cream cake, Fudgy, I think you called it. Fudgy the cake.
Fudgy the Whale.
The whale. Also a cake. Exposing myself. It
was a cake. We cut into it, and indeed it was a cake.
Yeah, cut into it. It's not the place I would have guessed we would cut into it, but it was a bold choice. Just smack right in the kisser. And more importantly, we got 4 assists from Cork's favorite player over the weekend as the Red Bulls win 4-0 to go to 3-1-1 on the season.
Well, it's not that bright because the honeymoon's over. We finally lost the, we've lost our competitive advantage in the officiating sequence now that we'll have legitimate referees again in the league.
Oh, I thought you were talking about a different honeymoon being over, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, the PRO referees are back. The lockout is over. They were just waiting for Cork to be 1 year older on the official clock. So it's been a little bit of a week. How does it feel? Do you have any wisdom for us to offer, either from another rotation of the earth or from the ice cream cake that we just all ate together?
No, I mean, you kind of called me out just now that, yeah, I went right in. I wanted to taste Fudgy's eye first and foremost. And, it ended up being a pretty good decision. I thought the eye was very tender in a way that I wasn't expecting.
Is it some kind of like Moby Dick kind of?
Yeah, I haven't gotten to that part of the book yet. I haven't read it.
I'm sure there's some Herman Melville.
No, there's no like backstory or anything with me and Fudgy. I mean, I just we just kind of got sprung on me, and sometimes you just act spontaneously, and yeah, I was a good decision. I don't think there should be any controversy about it.
But, I figure many listeners have had a Fudgy the Whale.
Like sometimes you just got to get to the final third and let the ball do its own thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't over-program everything. This does remind me that apparently there's a section later in Moby Dick that I've not gotten to where they sail by another ship and there's like a bizarro Captain Ahab who, instead of losing a leg, has lost an arm because of Moby Dick. And they chat for a little bit, and Bizarro Ahab is like, oh yeah, he bit off my arm, but I'm kind of over it. Like, I'm not like obsessed about the whale or anything. That'd be crazy. That'd be weird. And then Ahab's like, right, so where is he again? Yeah. I'm trying to I feel like there's something about the Red Bulls in there for me, and I don't know what it is. I feel like there's something about the managers. I feel like there's something about something. I don't know, but I think it will become apparent to us
this year.
This is maybe our future salad.
Yeah, use that as a teaser to keep listening all year, fans. Yeah. Eventually, Brit will get this Moby Dick metaphor worked out.
Yeah. We're going to mix it with a million different things until
I'll try to shoehorn a One Piece analog in there at one point.
Yeah, and I'll just nod politely. Yeah. 4-0 over Miami in a game that was just drenched in rain. This makes it, 2 out of 3 home games this year that were really rainy?
2 out of 2, isn't it?
2 out of 2?
2 out of 2,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's only been 2. I don't know why I was trying to give us an extra one. Apropos of nothing, baseball opening day is tomorrow, except it's not because the Mets have already been rained out.
Yeah, I mean, New York is now has South Carolina weather from 10, 15 years ago. So
Was there an uncanny ability to only rain on weekends in South Carolina as well?
just raining like every single afternoon,
Right,
like it
yeah.
has practically all
Out of
winter
nowhere,
this year.
right?
Yeah.
I feel like last year in particular was bad because like every day I'd be sitting in here like bright sunny bluebird day, and then every time it became like Friday at 5 p.m. it's torrential downpour.
There was some reporting that was linking to some literature saying that that wasn't an accident, that it was happening on the weekends, that the pattern of car commutes during the week leads to like an atmospheric buildup that like the pressure releases on the weekends. So
Another reason to.
but now, since we're recording on the day that congestion pricing passed, goodbye to all that, another win in the column. Josh Gottheimer's screaming. And now everyone can just focus on the really important destinations to drive to, which are East Hanover, New Jersey, and Montclair State University.
Yep.
To watch the real shit that goes on in the Garden State. But 4-0, again, as I said, this is the big game that wasn't, because it was marked by so many absences. One has to laugh a little bit at everyone who bought a resale ticket for over $150 just to get rained on, and then not have Messi show up, and then have Suarez and Jordi Alba and was Busquets there? Get completely waxed 4-0.
Beaches, you sell your ticket?
I did sell my ticket, not unfortunately for over 150, but whoever did buy it, I hope they enjoyed themselves.
What was the final going price?
It was like 100.
That's pretty good still.
Yeah, not bad.
Wait, you
regular
sold yours
season
like
game.
last minute?
Yeah,
Yeah.
For especially since the forecast was already in at that point.
it's true.
I'll take that.
I mean, I blame my own hubris. I didn't lower my ticket prices, but also like I'm kind of against ticket scalping at the end of the day. So who really like wins at the end of the day?
I'm for it, but I think it should be the old school way where you buy it outside.
Yeah.
Where you're not sure if it's like actually gonna work.
And like the person you buy it from has to be like a 60-year-old man who's been doing that for presumably 40 years.
Yeah. I have fond memories of. Now that I think about it, I feel like a straight up feel like a straight up old man right now.
Oh, totally.
You
remember actual human scalpers?
And
around the
when I
arena?
went to a game at Real Madrid and I bought a paper ticket off of a man who was haggling with me outside to go to see Real Madrid versus Villarreal. Ronaldo wasn't there, but I got to see Gareth Bale play, and it was actually probably a high watermark for my Spanish too, because I was legitimately haggling and arguing with this guy about like, hey, there's only 15 minutes left. You're gonna sell it to me for that much. And that was when like, what would you do now? You're gonna like give me like a burner phone to like that we're gonna like exchange like Ticketmaster login information? Give me a break.
I was thinking like in my head. Like becoming older, it was a big switch when the Scalper switched from like printed out box office tickets to Ticketmaster like printouts. Even that was like a big step
Like
for
on
me.
8x11
yeah, like
paper.
on
Yeah.
A4 paper, and now like you can't even. The scanners won't read it unless it's moving. Like you can't. You take like an Amazon Kindle e-ink thing to like read it because there's no like paper option for tickets anymore.
When I went to
Bring your
Just
iPad.
pass it back through the gate.
Yeah, bring like your laptop through. It's like
when I went to Leyton Orient in November, they actually still said that you had to print your ticket. And I did, but then it turned out that wasn't true. You could just have a thing.
That's so long, 2014.
Yeah.
Having to print out your ticket before the game. That was a brief little window, but
who
that was
also
fucking annoying one.
Who
I'll
does that?
I hate the cashless shit. I hate the app shit, but it is better than printing at home.
Oh, you know what though? Like back when the tickets were just a card, that was the best.
That was a good
That was the best
intermediate.
form. We could still have that.
Yeah, that also is all newfangled and everything. Why don't the the sports biz trade magazines
It's the
like
same
that.
like touchless like card technology as your credit card.
Also, it's just a nice little psychological trick that makes you feel special.
Yeah.
You get a little
nice
card.
little treat.
Yeah.
a nice little red card.
Look at my little card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if it's made
member.
out of like metal,
Right.
Yeah.
That was a real gimme. Those things couldn't have cost that much.
Right.
That was a real unforced error.
Yeah, like
by the-
hotel card keys. They just give you like 4 of them if you ask.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. And if you try to return them, they get like actively annoyed at you. They're like,
it's like just
"Fuck."
throw them out.
Yeah. Do I have anywhere to put them? No, of course not.
I'm not going to reuse them.
Yeah. You stupid.
Flush them down the toilet.
Yeah. Go feed it to a turtle.
Yeah.
Jesus. Anyway. We
4-1 in Miami.
4-0.
4-0.
Yeah, the no was the
That's
one
right.
was
That's right.
taken
I
back.
keep forgetting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another clean sheet for the storied Ryan Mara.
Good Ryan Mara appearance. Were any of us there?
No.
Okay. I wasn't there because I don't have a season ticket currently. So, although I wonder if I could have just bought a ticket towards the end.
Last minute, probably for like $50 or something.
Yeah. Well,
which is like
it's still more than I.
wanted to pay
I want to
for
spend more than
a Red
$25
Bulls
on
game.
a ticket.
And I
Although-
will say,
What would it have been worth, like in retrospect, as an experience, like a $50 ticket?
I have to say I'm getting pretty soft about the rain recently. I just need to make an investment in like proper rain boots, and I haven't. But after the last match, I was properly soggy. Wasn't a happy camper, and I admit this is me getting soft. But it's a fair question. So none of us were there, but we did watch to varying degrees. Myself, probably the least. But I thoroughly enjoyed getting the updates as it came in, as us slowly plodding away. Again, there were significant personnel changes. Emil Forsberg was absent because he was not replying to our... I shouldn't be so flippant, but Forsberg was with Sweden. Apparently ended up starting for them in one of their games. Cornell was with Paraguay, which is why we see Ryan Mara appear again.
But he didn't end up playing, right?
Cornell?
Yeah, because the Paraguay games were in Russia.
They got canceled. Yeah.
Oh, because of the attack.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't put that together.
Yeah.
I just thought, I was like, oh, is Russia just disqualified from everything?
Everything.
What happened to that? Like, didn't they...
Might be over now.
They're still banned.
Oh.
They can't. I guess they can play friendlies like that, but they can't.
Oh, it was a friendly.
Be in tournaments. Yeah.
Well, maybe they can only play friendlies too with specific countries at that point as well.
Well,
so,
yeah, I don't think the USSF is going to be scheduling a friendly with Russia, but
You never know.
there's 200 countries out there.
The Daniel Odeman was gone and would have been suspended anyway. Lionel Messi, of course, was absent. Who else was gone?
Isla.
Isla was gone. So we
Tolkien
see
was gone.
Tolkien was gone. We see a vintage pairing of Reyes and Nealis at the back. We see Dylan Nealis play at right back, and wow, you know what? We had a 4-0 win with Kyle Duncan at left back, didn't we? That's something.
Although he,
If you wanted to find what's the opposite of a silver lining in this game, whatever the opposite of a silver lining in this game was, it was Duncan having some
he was
messy
the closest
moments.
thing to make it not 4-0.
Right.
Yeah. But, it was like a weird matchup because it felt like Peter Stroud was one of the fastest players in the world,
Yeah, you had Stroud start in central midfield. We had Wiki Carmona make his first start of the year. We had Dennis Yengar make his first start of the year. Frankie was, of course, holding it down in the middle. And then our strike partnership was Lewis Morgan and Dante Van Zer. And if you're listening, you probably already know this was a quite fruitful partnership on the day. Morgan, of course, getting a hat trick. Van Zer bagging 4 assists, as he also assisted Carmona for his first goal this season. Just briefly running through Miami's lineup again. Julian Gressel, that's a name, did start. I think on the highlights or on the broadcast at one point they referred to him as the MLS veteran, and I was like,
Pretty much.
Yeah.
all right. Robert
where we're
Taylor, the suspiciously English named Finn.
I think he's
started.
actually. I think his parents are American. Actually, even.
Oh,
worse.
really? I
Yeah.
thought his dad was English.
Yeah, you might be right, but I think it might. Oh no, it was. I think it was McVeigh, their other Scandinavian guy with an Anglo name. Was American parents, but yeah.
Jordi Alba, of course, played. Busquets did start for them, and Suarez, as we said. The back three of Christoph, am I saying that right? I think Noah Allen, who's 19 years old, and Thomas Aviles, who's 20 years old. So a young back line for Miami, and I believe their first choice goalkeeper was also out. They had Carlos Dos Santos, 23-year-old, playing for them. But this game was 1-0 at the half. And how did it look? Was the rain affecting the game? Was this was there more than meets the eye for the scoreline when it comes to this game, particularly in the first half?
It was definitely, it wasn't like a full on deluge where it was like, the game was risking cancellation or anything like that. Which obviously hasn't been a risk in the past because, as we've complimented, the groundskeepers seem to do a pretty good job at RBA, but it was definitely a little bit of the in the first half, especially. It trailed off a little bit in the second half, but in the first half, especially, it had a bit of the like FIFA 06 kind of the ball. You saw like a lot of splashing whenever the ball would fly on the ground, kind of ostentatiously splashing. But that kind of died down in the second half, and maybe that's maybe the rain. You'd think the rain was holding back the like Cadillac Hollywood team, but instead maybe the rain was holding us back. As things turned out.
I kind of agree with that. I don't know how they keep that field so nice, and there surely must be an incredible drainage system going on because, like you're saying, like
they got a river right there. It's easy.
Frankie Rogers Boulevard, as we saw in like the pictures of the flooding later on. But it like you would think that it being logged up with water makes like the team that's kind of like working harder or like putting in more effort. Maybe it's like the one winning kind of the balls, but it did seem a little unpredictable. But in general, like, I don't know, once our team got into rhythm, it just kind of felt like, it was the score line almost like it should have been more tilted for us too,
Yeah, I mean, it looked like we were carving up their back line pretty consistently. I mean, what is this? Is there something to this strike partnership, this combination of players that I haven't seen?
I think it's worth, I mean, we kind of did introduce some of the context that, Miami was missing Messi and, probably a lot of their first choice, especially near the back of the field, obviously starting to, one teenager and one semi-teenager in the back. And also it was, somewhat even game in the first half. It was only 1-0 going into the half. Miami had a few punches here and there. But then I think, in the second half, and maybe this is the point where we mentioned, the strange situation where Miami just didn't come out onto the pitch for the second half, or they just came out like 5 minutes late or whatever, which seemed to be some sort of kind of gamesmanship or just, typical group diva behavior from Miami. But whatever it was, it didn't end up having, whatever impact it did. If anything, Miami seemed like the team that, had kind of given up on playing through the conditions and playing through the context of missing, their ideal team and just kind of gave up. They weren't even like, kind of hounding the ref on a lot of the, kind of scuffles that were popping up and stuff like that. I mean, you saw a team that was just pretty checked out of the game and just kind of realized that it wasn't going to be their day and just gave up entirely.
Yeah, it almost feels like them coming out later, like, they warmed up a little too much inside the locker room, kind of got a little too cozy and like remembered what it's like to get back home after a cold night. So
It's not like they don't have rain in Miami though.
no,
Yeah.
but like, you know, like could they do it in a cold rainy night in Harrison is, you know, very much what this was, and it looks like no. You know, like I think Morgan said something is like, oh yeah, it reminds me of Scotland, kind of, you know, in like a tongue-in-cheek kind of way. But you know, I think,
Right.
Yeah, like,
I think it's genuinely a thing where like at least part of what's going on here, the dynamic is, you know, I've joked about this online recently where it's just kind of like I joke about it, but I am also fairly serious where like the way MLS is pitching things ever since Messi showed up is that it's like games don't matter unless he's there. And, you know, it's got to be at least subconsciously in these Miami players' heads, especially more than anyone else, that like, oh, if Messi's not around, what's even the point of us putting in a good shift? You know, the game doesn't matter. Nobody's gonna give a shit about losing this game without Messi.
Which is a little crazy when you still have Suarez, Busquets, and Alba. On the side,
yeah.
You know? And Suarez played the full 95 or whatever minutes too, which definitely took me by surprise.
I mean, it's a psychological game wherein, like, yeah, I mean, the league is more competitive now, and you know, yeah, give an inch, and another team that's motivated on the day, like we were, will take a mile. So
and to speak to their, I guess, inexperience on the roster, despite the fact that they threw out like, you know, 3 of the Barca guys basically. Like that back line, Noah Allen did not look like he was having fun at all playing the game of soccer that entire night.
I was going to say, at risk of working backwards on the goals, I think nothing really seems to be emblematic of them giving up more than, I think it's Allen's reaction or attempt at guarding the 4th goal, where the Reyes plays that really good ball over the top. Van Zer has a good touch to run it forward. And, you know, Van Zer, as we've commented on, doesn't seem particularly fast. And he didn't seem particularly fast at this moment either. But Allen is like laboring, trying to keep up with him, and takes this bizarre angle and has the most futile, pathetic little shove into his back.
From the outside.
Yeah, that was one of the weaker attempts at a tackle. I don't know if he assumed he was just going to like take him down and take a yellow, or what, but it really felt like it didn't
exclamation
matter that much.
point on
He
how
almost pushed him into a more
bad their
dangerous line,
performance
you know?
was.
Yeah, it was like, I don't know what he thought he was doing, but
I mean, it's like Busquets. I mean, Busquets is the kind of player he is, and part of that is that he's not a guy who's going to really like have a knife between his teeth in the midfield when games get tough. He's a guy who, you know, obviously the whole calling card of the Barcelona and Spain years was that they were a team that would just cruise through games, passing teams to death. And when they can't control a game, Busquets never really had, or when, you know, they were never really falling behind in games. So Busquets never really had to be kind of a defensive dogfighter, and you certainly saw that today. And in this game, and on the other end of the ball with Busquets too, I thought it was an interesting kind of case study between the game the previous week against Columbus, where they had Darlington Nagbe, and to a lesser extent Aiden Morris. I mean, not to a lesser extent, but just, you know, Nagbe being more kind of the you know, household name and characteristic player in Columbus's midfield, where he was able to really control and dictate the game by being sort of a dribbler, and then his sort of style of retaining the ball in midfield, which is kind of dribbling and then touching it around and playing it quick. Whereas Busquets is a guy who likes to kind of like sit on the ball, drag his foot on the ball, wait to kind of pick out the perfect pass, as opposed to kind of moving it around quickly. And you saw that, you know, difference in dynamic being punished by, you know, the Red Bulls on the day.
To the point about it, the game's not seeming to matter if Messi's not there, and that seeping in. Tata Martino did confirm that they got a request from RBNY to delay the game, and that they were willing to do it, but the Federation said no. Was Martino like suspended or something on Saturday? Because for some reason FootMob did not have him listed. But okay.
He had his hood up the whole game.
He had his hood up, and he had like these big buggy glasses.
Oh, so he's like in a steampunk era or something.
Kind
He's
of.
steampunk now. But we were hoping last week that was like an odd joke attempt by Forsberg that didn't come across, but apparently it was real, which is a little embarrassing, more than a little embarrassing, to be sure. But it seems like there's some actual smoke there to that mentality, I guess. If both of the teams are seriously considering postponing, without getting into this whole a digression about that, it is just sort of crazy thinking how back to what a big step back it's been to have Messi in terms of this attitude. It feels like we're back in like 2012-ish era of like MLS teams wanting to genuinely alter their regular season schedule to like accommodate teams from England coming over for a friendly. Like we had moved beyond that. We started moving beyond that in 2015, and now we're just like totally doe-eyed or star-eyed. Just
very
completely
opposite
discounting games,
opposite the energy of tackling Busquets in the All-Star game in 2014 and Guardiola and Porter not shaking hands and all that kind of stuff.
No, sure.
That felt like a moment where the league was arriving and getting more fun, and it's like the exact opposite mindset now.
Yeah.
It's very annoying.
Which, it's a pleasant surprise to me that we certainly showed up and seemed to take this game more seriously,
right?
And made a statement win. It has to be said. It's fun. It's a good thing. I mean, what a different vibe and attitude as compared to last year. When Miami was in town.
Including the thing where it was an interesting, especially after we've been kind of talking about the last few episodes, the few times, putting I guess it wasn't T-shirts, but it was like flags or something.
Flags.
That they put out on the seats, but to spell Red Bulls out in the stand and make it look red, which... Yeah, I think the rain kind of impacted, and just the general crowd and makeup of the crowd probably impacted how much of that worked as a stunt, but as a visual before the game, it was pretty cool and like a good way to little gesture towards better vibes than the last Miami game.
Yeah,
certainly.
and the first time I saw that, I did a double take because did they replace the seats with red seats and spell it out?
Yeah,
because I was like, oh, that would have actually looked really good in the stadium to have it spell
right
words instead of maybe just
my
logo,
vote would still be New York, but
yeah, I agree.
Either way, it did look pretty good, and the shirts seemed to cover most of the seat, so yeah, I did have to do a double take, but yeah, I mean, definitely a step up in terms of the teams seeming to have more of a competitive spirit. But it's still crazy that this really was 1-0 at the half, and it's crazy how much Miami kind of just melted away, especially after the second goal.
Credit to Schwartz for setting the team up right and having them ready for this weird game and getting the result. But at the same time, I really can't help but put an asterisk on this one. I don't know if we've necessarily learned too much from this game, and even if we had, it's still just March, so still a lot to figure out about what this team's made of. So we shall see. But I mean, this is obviously an early good signal if they can step up in games like this when they're shorthanded in situations like this, and not just throwing their hands up and playing, garbage ball once they don't have their ideal team like we saw, in the previous managerial regime.
I was going to say something similar to that point. I think that us, having a clean sheet with Kyle Duncan at left back says more about Miami than it does about Kyle Duncan's potential performance, or even Von Zier, who did have a good game. I think this would have been a game where Manuel would just punch somebody in the mouth and get either a couple assists or even a goal, on his end. But I did think that other individuals did actually just have better games than before. I think Reyes settled in a little bit better. He had a chance to find his rhythm a little bit, where I don't think he had a chance to do that against Columbus. And I also thought, honestly, Stroud didn't look too bad, like in a more central position. I think he just was like an NPC on the right side. Whenever he was kind of playing toward the right, he just didn't look like he was in place at all. So I like him playing more central, even if he's not particularly better as a deeper midfielder. So I kind of welcome that, and honestly almost prefer him to some of the performances we've seen from Edelman recently.
Maybe, yeah. But, he was kind of, like I was saying before, he looked faster than maybe he is. Maybe due to the rain, but also maybe like
Miami's particularly slow midfield. Sure.
I really just like the way that Van Zer and Morgan were interacting with each other more, in that Morgan seemed to really take kind of a leadership on the pitch to like tell Van Zer after plays. Like you saw a few shots of this where he was like kind of guiding him. He's like, hey, you need to walk this way. And like he was like basically being the attacking coach for the team, I guess. But, I think the way that they're able to communicate better, I think that maybe like Morgan and Manuel are able to communicate with each other as well. So.
Well, and just to kind of like, and this is sort of a broader thing rather than like this specific tactical discussion or this specific game, but I don't know what sort of, politics are at play or whatever, or whether it was, them not being how sure or them not being certain how fit he was going to be over the course of this year. But it really kind of seems like Morgan is more of a captain than things necessarily, or than the official lineup would tell you. I think you could see that in his first season a couple years ago in some of the early kind of like all access media footage that he was pretty vocal and kind of a major influence on the pitch. And you saw a lot of this in this game. Even just, watching on TV, you could see a lot of communication and organizing on his part. And I think he kind of relished taking on that role with, Forsberg being absent.
Yeah. And his protagonism is evident on that third goal.
He's more of a protagonist, in kind of over the whole course and flow of the game when he's playing, kind of more in the middle as a striker rather than, one of the wingers who's expected to kind of catalyze things as opposed to just sort of, kind of deal with whatever balls funnel up to the top to him there.
I mean, same thing with Van Zer, where I think a lot of what he succeeded at in this game is, kind of similar to what Kyle Duncan could do better with when he's given the right tools to, is like, if you're forced to play more simply, you'll play better. I think this goes for both like these players that I'm thinking of, where it's like, oh yeah, if you don't let Kyle Duncan think, he can play in a good ball and occasionally like a good cross or something. But if you give him time and space, he's probably going to make the wrong decision. I feel like Van Zer here basically could only take like simple flicks, and pretty much all of them ended up in assists. He played a good game. Like I think he played, like, in an absolute sense, he played a good game. But he was still like kind of frustrating because he still missed like pretty open, like, finishing places. So, I think, my theory is that, like, if there is some like coaching that's letting Van Zer play a little bit more simply, play a little bit more directly, he doesn't have time to dawdle or try to dribble or try to like make a play, he's going to end up with 4 assists. But then, we saw like he was outperforming his expected assists for this game as well. So,
that says more about the finishers,
right? Like he's still not putting in doing. Like the most quality chances, but like I still think like he's averaging like whatever many assists in that game.
He's technically, I mean, he and Morgan are technically at the top of the league scoring charts right now. Right.
I would. I think it's notable that all of Van Zer's assists were pretty simple passes, and I think that's a good thing. I don't mean that to like drag him down. This week it's not quite the tap in counter that we're going back to. I think one of the goals was a little bit more of a tap in. Maybe the fourth one, I can't remember, because all of the finishes are pretty tidy finishes. Morgan certainly has the shooting boots on right now, and they're also very satisfying because he didn't necessarily hit them super hard either. He just really slotted them nice and well, and knew exactly where he wanted to put it. And like you guys said, the expected stats speak more to that than really Van Zier's performance. But I think it is very promising that he was able to just make pretty quick, intuitive, simple passes and be confident that where Morgan would be on the pitch. Definitely a promising sign. I mean, if this were this team a year ago, on each of those passes, he would have had to pick up his head and like think about what to do. I think already, even with just some simple stuff going on, we feel like it feels like the player's a little bit more intuitive.
It's kind of like front. When Morgan had that hat trick against Toronto in like his second game for us before Struber decided we weren't going to try and score a goal ever again.
Yeah. I wonder, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if Morgan just stays up top now. I mean, it's hard to argue against it. It's also interesting thinking about the different reports about a striker. I mean, there's the Timo Werner thing we've talked about, and then apparently there's also Doyle has now said that we're in on a young DP striker of some sort. And, I think we can certainly make room, but
unfortunately, the smoke seems pretty hot for Giroud to LA. So
yeah, well, I mean, a month ago, I would have said that Morgan as a striker is sort of like a contingency option, not necessarily something I would plan on, but we'll see how the form keeps up or if it's really even necessary to keep him up there. But, maybe it arises as a serious option here. We'll see. I don't know. We also get a debut goal or a first goal of the season for Wiki Carmona. How did Carmona and Yengar look out there in the midfield?
I thought that Carmona looked a little bit more purposeful in general.
Yeah, is there any
He
more?
did look more purposeful, but he definitely had some like cartoon character like running moments.
Yeah.
I think
it's just the way he's shaped though.
Yeah, no, it's just like Brit, you brought it up last time, and I just couldn't help. I couldn't not see that at
The
times.
tank
When
thing,
he just like ran through.
But I thought, in general, he looked a lot more focused than we've seen him before. I noticed him more in like play than I noticed Yengar in general in the game. He seemed to be okay, I guess. I don't know. Not really that big of an impact yet, but there's still time. But yeah, I think Wiki, like, maybe not necessarily big future, but definitely decent present on this team.
He's solidified the role he's had on this team for the last couple of years.
Or like kind of defined one almost maybe now. Like maybe he's like that option,
What kind of option?
Kind of like where that a widey, attacky, like midfieldy player in this team.
Who plays like 15 minutes every 3 games.
So it's like the Omir Fernandez potential replacement.
Yeah.
I was gonna show my age on my birthday even more and say before you mentioned the playing only 15 minutes every few months thing, I was gonna say it sounds like Florian Velo, who you're describing.
That's a name.
Yeah, but that's from the real olden days. Ooh. That's a name some of the very old Red Bulls fans might remember.
Yeah.
If Wiki Carmona is Florian Velo, then I guess Ronald Donkor is Vincent Bezecourt.
Wow, man. I thought Bezecourt had a real role in that squad. I mean, I suppose he did, but yeah. I mean, okay, obviously great results. Felt good to put a statement down, but does this mean that the Carmona, Stroud, Amaya, Yengar midfield has put my nerves at rest? No. We'll see. It'll be good to have Forsberg back. It'll be good to have Edelman back. And certainly Tolkien as well as Kyle Duncan left back.
It was funny to just like roll out literal teenagers at the end of the game.
Yeah. I mean,
that is a good feeling to have that back a little bit,
I kind of miss having like, Ruben Bover and like random
Armando.
random, 25-year-old guys,
Yeah.
Armando. Yeah. There was a point, where like I used to know who everyone in the 18 was, just by a glance. And maybe I'm going to get back to that now. But like over the last couple seasons, there's been guys on the bench where I'm like, you could not pay me to
Pick 'em out of
remember
the
which
lineup.
one is which, and maybe that's going to slowly change as if the team form still stays good.
I mean, you were correct to not do that. I mean, it was correct to not learn who Lucas Monzon was. It was correct.
Monzon was one of the slightly more legit potential ones.
To not
though.
learn who Patrick Segrist was.
Yeah.
It was not appropriate or necessary to really bone up and get to know these guys.
There's been no reason for me to notice what Rold Mitchell looks like yet.
yeah.
I do. One last thing about like the players from my point is that I did want to give a shout out to Dylan Nealis, who I also thought put in another very like good shift in his position.
That's a good pass for the first goal that Van Zer flicked on.
Showing no reason not to start at right back
I think so too.
at this point.
But
But we'll be proved wrong again this weekend, I'm sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we get into the next week, there's been some news. First, the PRO lockout. I guess we mentioned that at the very, very top. But I
Thank
think
you.
it's,
Good job, Officer Penso. Good negotiating.
Is
Good-
he
good job,
the union
yeah.
rep?
well, he was like,
He's been the most chirpy of all the. I don't know if he's officially like one of the top guys, but
Right.
he's been. Oh, yeah.
there's
I
the
don't-
rumors that
it
he was
wasn't
like the aggressor.
Well,
like, the
yeah, it
muscle
wasn't.
guy.
I guess it wasn't public, but it was a report that somebody on the MLS side filed a complaint with like the NLRB that
Someone was trying to
Penso
intimidate,
was like trying to intimidate the scab refs. So
I mean, presumably he was in a police union when he was a police officer, so it makes it adds up. But so I think they're coming back this next match day, right? If not this next one, then the one
Yeah.
after that.
It's more news from this match is that some people got $10 e-cash for glazed donuts.
Yeah, what's the deal with that?
I guess they're just
Why?
giving people $10 for showing up in rainy days, but I sold my ticket and I still got it. So
Oh, but they're donuts at the stadium.
yeah, I guess they replaced the Mrs. Fields cookies.
Mrs. Fields cookies. What were those? That hasn't made no impression on me.
Cookies, like the mall
There- you
cookies.
could
A
get-
whole stand for that?
You could get
well,
cookies
it's like
at
where the
RBA.
churros and the Dippin' Dots and stuff.
I think
were.
all this was on the north end, which might as well be.
No, the cookies were
Bangladesh
like on the
for
south
us.
end too.
God, this just reminded
You guys
me.
aren't real RBA heads.
No,
I walked around
well,
the
we've
whole-
never bought cups. So, yeah.
This just reminds me that there's actually a second concourse like on the second
200 level.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I completely forget about that. I need to go up there again just to see what's going on.
It's very Dead Mall kind of
Okay.
vibes. Like it feels like a place the time forgot.
It's
But I haven't been there in like 6 years, so yeah.
It's the second mall in Arizona City.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go up there next match.
If you're in the concourse, you can come meet us at the concourse.
No, don't come meet me. I'm just thinking of that specific. There's a Lemmy sketch that I think of a lot, but it's kind of not really quotable. No one will really know what you're talking about because it's just when he convinces this guy to dick around on his camera at the thing, and he just says, "I'm doing that tonight. I'm doing that next week. I'm doing that." Anyway, the PRO lockout ended. I don't have a good sense of who won and who lost.
Yeah, it's weird because the deal seems to be going until 2030, which seems pretty long, but maybe that's not as long from now as I think it is because time is...
Well, how long are the MLS CBAs? Because I think the MLB CBAs are about that long.
Yeah.
I mean, they've had some shorter ones, but
I'm just glad to go back to not caring about the refs, just having them be
just a
NPCs
regular Fotis
again.
Pizzacos game.
Yeah.
It seems like other people were up in arms. Unfortunately, although I'm glad the union has a deal again, I can't say I felt an incredible difference, or rather, I would say it didn't seem like there was a lot of public pressure to bring the ref. Certainly not compared to the NFL ref lockout that happened a few years ago.
I was gonna say it felt like we got a lot of very favorable calls that were kind of iffy, if anything, throughout this. So,
Did we?
I don't know. It felt like there were some calls that we might have gotten called against us that weren't called.
I guess there was the Nashville red card, but that got called back.
Yeah.
There are definitely some moments in some games, maybe some non-RBNY games that I saw where like the, ref would be like blatantly kind of like interfering with play and stuff like
That's
that.
right.
Be
Or
kind
behind
of
play.
Be kind of clumsy, but
There was one game where one guy seemed a little out of shape and touched the ball once and then just consistently seemed to be getting in the way. Yeah. But I don't know, back to normal now. There's another thing I was going to say, but I lost it. The other piece of news, of course, is you may have heard that there was a big dramatic post regarding the new Golden Boy captain of the Red Bulls, Emil Forsberg, which we just can't not mention, where his wife, a partner of 19 years, said that essentially it sounds like Emil Forsberg, according to this post, has essentially just stopped talking to his family back in Germany ever since being in New York, which is wild. Pretty nasty business if true. I've been sort of thinking about this, and it struck me that I think it's sort of I guess, abandoning your family, I suppose, is one way to put it, or just sort of just stopping contact like this. It's like one of the most scummy things you could do without committing a crime or being a fireable offense, because if you assault someone or commit a crime, that's one thing. And, or if you're racist, unless you're Dante Van Zer, you might get fired or more disciplined. This is this thing where it's still your private life, but it's really low, really, if it's true, if you haven't seen it, the sum of the post is essentially that, after moving here, it seems like he just has not been in contact with his family and just very minimal contact, if any, his wife and his two kids. It seems like his second kid is no more than a couple years old, if even, which, to me came a bit, as a surprise. One, I don't assume anyone would do this. And two, Forsberg seemed to be a fairly normal seeming person and seemed to be hitting all the normal PR notes and everything, but just goes to show that
we don't know anybody.
You don't know anyone, even if you met him at the airport and gave him a high five.
Well, I mean, since you brought up the airport, I mean, it is sort of a thing. I mean, we mentioned it. I mean, when he was showing up and just, how kind of a little bit awkward and weird and a bit underwhelming some of the vibes were. And it is interesting to think if he was secretly just kind of weirded out and having a bad time at the airport that, afternoon, to think I'm breaking up my family to do all this. And I don't mean to be glib about it, but it's it is just, very kind of just
I thought you were going the other way.
Thing.
How bad is his family?
Well, it's also still unclear, because his wife had made a post along the lines indicating that they were going to move to New York and everything, and it's unclear whether he had this, whether he was moving to New York sort of to escape or run away from his family, or if maybe he got here and then found himself thinking, you know what, actually, I'm good. We don't know. There's been no response. And again, just to cover ourselves here, I'm relaying what was posted publicly here. I know I do not have any firsthand knowledge or secondhand knowledge. I'm not reporting on this, but it does bring
That kind of stuff doesn't just happen to like every player. Or,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's not like a normal thing, routine thing that just happens sometimes that your wife resorts to posting on social media that you've abandoned the family.
it does cast new light upon just the sort of recruiting narrative, though, that like Forsberg always this big new signing, the biggest signing we've had in years. Again, in previous episodes, we've been skeptical sort of about that framing just on paper, on the merits. But then this makes it seem like this certainly sours the vibes around it one way or the other. And definitely makes it seem like less of a wholesome sort of situation.
And even from like you were kind of getting to just there, I mean, even from the purely footballing side of like, oh, isn't it neat that we were able to get, Forsberg to just come join us? He's coming here because he thinks it's such a great project and he wants to win trophies and all that kind of stuff. I don't know, this stuff like this coming out, like you said, Brett, one way or another kills the vibes, even on a purely footballing level.
Yeah.
Well, in one way, it does make him seem like a big player to be getting into some kind of like big tabloid
Player.
drama, whatever. But I mean, like, I guess the joke that could be made is that, he's more committed to this project than he is to his family, which is funny because like the
Suppose we
first
can
time,
hope. Yeah.
right? Well, and which is funny because when you read like the Shanga Forsberg post or whatever, it mentions like you're throwing away like 19 years or whatever. It's like, wow, if you think about it, like the relationship isn't like that much younger than our club.
I don't know where you're going here with this, to be quite honest.
Well,
But
just like the like the idea of like, if he gave up his wife for the New York Red Bulls, like we're not even as old as like their relationship really all that much.
are you counting to the 2006 date? That's controversial. of
No,
you.
well, I was counting like even to 1990 or like
Uh-huh.
7, but
Yeah, I mean,
it's not that much older than a 19-year-old relationship. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's at a certain level, it's his personal business, but it certainly does. It'll be interesting to see if it affects
locker room.
but also just sort of how the team presents itself. Because as I've been a little bit annoying about, the team has had a little bit of a, gosh golly, aren't we just such a family experience like vibe recently, which I find to not even be an effective way to advertise to families, but whatever. Yeah. And a little bit more awkward to do that now. We're even doing that a little bit this weekend with like Dante Van Zer's mom came and visited, which, biting my tongue, big time on that one. Just thought of something else there. But, they certainly seem committed to try to rehabilitate Dante Van Zer's image in a way that I don't think is necessary. There's one way to like say, hey, look, he had 4 assists, he did well, but you don't have to go out of your way to be like, oh, look at our nice little Belgian guy. Like I would just leave it, like, I don't think it's necessary to try to pretend that even before the racism incident with Van Zer, like had this dramatic, messy breakup with like Love Island Belgium, person who like has said all sorts of nasty things about him. Like maybe you should just sniff out things for like vibes. I mean, it certainly seems like a different mantra has taken hold from the no dickheads rule from the Thelwell era. I mean, maybe we're going to go for only dickheads. I don't know. Maybe it'll work, but you can't go around parading the team as like super wholesome, kids vibes at the same time.
We need more tattooed millionaires.
Yeah, God, who said that again? What were we talking about?
That was
Lawless.
Alexi Lawless about the MNT, but I find the Van Zer stuff very, very weird.
The funny thing about the Van Zer thing was that like the mom post, like they released after the Forsberg stuff had dropped, and the caption is "Family is everything."
Yeah, they also had a post that was like, whether you're rocking with us for 3 days or 3 decades, like you're part of the family. And I'm like, ugh.
Part of the fam.
You're part of the fam. And I'm like, I would not be stressing the length of time of a commitment to a family right now. You can post so many things. You don't have to post that. You don't have to post at all. Again, always still an option.
Maybe they're doing it as a troll, which even worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
If you think it's cute to joke about a guy breaking up his family, then honestly, fuck you.
Yeah.
But I'll stop my anger there. Yeah.
Yeah. I would bet on just being clueless, but not to get into betting, although I do wonder, at this point it feels like just a period of time until we have our new expose on over under, first throw in for the match, at Caesar's sports book or whatever. But something to keep our eyes on for the rest of the season. Certainly a new development on the Emil Forsberg front. Also interesting that it happened while he's away from the team. Maybe he's going to come back from Sweden camp and address the locker room and say, hey, guys, actually, Dante Van Zer stole my wife's Instagram account and posted that. And it's actually all him. We're going to fire him and we're going to move on. We'll see.
I mean, if Red Bull management knows how to deal with kind of a power struggle in any way.
Jesus. Watch. I mean, actually, the better gag would have been, and just pretend I said this instead. Emil Forsberg comes back. All of a sudden, he only speaks Swedish, and he needs an interpreter for everything. We'll see. How many languages will Emil speak when he gets back? All right. Well, we're playing Orlando this weekend. Orlando not doing so hot.
O-Town.
They were one of the better teams last year.
Still Perea.
Yeah, they're probably going to be pretty sturdy. Probably going to be counterattacking. Probably going to be some dark arts. We pretty much know what to expect from an Oscar Perea team, and he's had a few years to put his stamp on Orlando. So, honestly, they're always a pretty good test. They're always a pretty good litmus test, I feel like, of how good your MLS team is, as far as whether you can handle a team like Orlando and come out of a game like that with a result, especially in their building. So, especially after I've been saying a lot of these games have been kind of asterisk games in the early parts of this year, I think this could be actually a pretty interesting and rigorous test that might, reveal a thing or two about what this team's capable of.
Yeah, Orlando, for what it's worth, are coming off of a 2-0 win against Austin. They did start the season a bit poorly, but it must be said that some of these losses that they've had were in CONCACAF Champions Cup. So they lost against Tigres. They had that really big loss against Miami, of course, in the league. But there was some squad rotation presumably happening while they were in CCL, so they probably will be a little bit more focused now that they're out of CCL. Mm-hmm. That said, even if we were to rattle off a win or some sort of result here, and even if you wanted to asterisk it, we're at the point now where that would still be pretty significant that the Red Bulls would then be 6 matches into the game and have into the season and have a pretty good points tally and a pretty good record. Like, that's not nothing. If you're trying to be a competitive team, and dare I say even a top of the table competing team, being able to rack up results in those sort of asterisk circumstances is what you need to be doing. Mm-hmm. And right now, through 5 games, we're 3-1-1. That's 10 points total. We're in 3rd place. We basically erased the goal differential difference between us and Miami last week. Miami's ahead of us in the table by 1 goal differential. And we have a game in hand as well. Cincinnati is the only other team above us.
Head-to-head's a tiebreaker too, right?
Is it now?
Maybe.
But Cincinnati is ahead of us, and I believe we're playing them after Orlando, no? So this start of the season has ended up being a bit of a gauntlet in terms of just having Columbus, Miami, Orlando, and Cincinnati all in a row. Again, Orlando is kind of low on the table right now, but I agree with how Cork described it. I think always still a solid result, a solid opponent, especially at home. And we'll see if I wasn't really expecting the Rebels at the beginning of the season to necessarily turn in a top of the table performance this year. But if we are going to be competitive, getting off to a hot start here while we have these tougher fixtures is going to be huge. And then we're going to have a stretch of games like, Chicago, Vancouver, New England, who's not too hot, City, who's not doing too hot, further down the schedule in the summer, where we could potentially keep that momentum going. In some ways, this feels like the opposite of what happened in the 2021 season, where we had that schedule where we played like New England 3 times in a month and we just got punched in the mouth a couple times and never really recovered, despite what could have been kind of a decent season. Maybe we're seeing the opposite of that. I don't know.
I was going to bring up even last season where it never felt like we were good at any point, right? Like I think a month from now at some point last season we were looking at like if 3 results had gotten differently we might have been in Shield contention at that point. So like the margins in this league every year seem to get a little bit less and less, so just like being on the other side of that and getting those results has proven to be like pretty good for our position in the standings, as well as like how I think both were perceived as a team by other teams. Once you see the points on the table, you kind of like win a little bit of that mental advantage a little bit more too, I think. And yeah, we just seem like we're up to play like a big team in the league where we get results every week pretty much.
Yeah, that's true. I think if we can get ourselves into a situation where teams like Chicago or New England or DC are coming in here and thinking, this might already be a loss, like that would be a huge psychological edge just in the sort of terms of fake it till you make it, which, as you're saying, in MLS, I think you can really ride that pretty far. And even if it's just a margin of like 4 to 7 points that you might have not had otherwise, that can make a huge difference at the end of the day. I admit I'm not totally familiar with our availability of who we're going to have back. Should we still be assuming that guys are going to be out?
I think Tolkien is back. Edelman's serving his suspension.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is Isla back?
Should be.
I think so. And then it's the question of how do we...
It's like the only people
line up
who
in the back.
wouldn't be back are the injured folk, and maybe Ngoma's been training as well. So everyone might be back.
He was in the game.
He was in the game. Yeah. He played.
Burke, back?
Yeah, might be back.
Yeah, I mean, he played for Jamaica.
Yeah.
Apparently, infamously, I didn't
he scored an own goal.
realize.
Yeah.
I didn't
Oh no.
realize what was going on with the national
He
team.
tied it up for the U.S. apparently.
Right. But yeah, I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see whether we see Morgan up top again. It'll also be interesting to see what the midfield looks like if we have Forsberg and Amaya available, but not Edelman. I mean, if Stroud and Edelman can more directly compete with each other and Wiki becomes a real option out on the left, that is potentially interesting. Jury's still out on Youngar, though. I think maybe give him a couple more games before we can make any real judgment. Where is Cameron Harper? I don't know. Maybe he's just further down the depth chart, and maybe that's not a terrible thing.
Honestly, he might be better than Yankor. We don't know.
Harper?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it would just be useful for him to, once again, just be a wide attacking player instead of moonlighting as a wingback.
The way you just kind of like were, kind of remembering Cameron Harper and with like the tone of your voice, it kind of made me think, Nestor, that fastball. Cameron Harper, that speed.
Yeah, such a strong. What else did he say about Nestor Cortez? We love. Many people are saying he's the strongest fastball we've ever seen. There's Paul O'Neill in the back. That was my trump card, so to speak, when arguing about the Yankees. Anyway, well, anything else we should say about Orlando coming up?
I kind of brought up that non sequitur as sort of a wrap-up point because I assumed nobody else had anything else to say about Orlando, but maybe I'm wrong.
Felipe again, right?
Is he really still
He's
alive?
still on Orlando.
Who knows? There's no way to know. We can't know these
It's
things.
MLS in 2024. Yeah.
We just don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe next week we'll be able to tell you. Till then.
That's a plan.
It's Alex.